I found a hidden camera inside my engagement ring, recording my every move. It sounds like something straight out of a bad Lifetime movie, right? Like a cheap thriller you'd half watch on a Sunday afternoon while scrolling through your phone. But for me, it was real. And it started the day I thought I was getting the happiest moment of my life. The way I found it, God, the sheer, suffocating absurdity of it all. I mean, who even thinks of something like that? Who crafts something so meant to be beautiful, so symbolic of forever, into a tool of absolute violation? Before you dive headfirst into this mess with me, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it, throw a like on this video if you're feeling it, share it with anyone you think needs to hear this kind of story, and definitely drop a comment below. Let me know what you do, or if you've ever been in a similar situation. Your thoughts mean a lot. I was living in this decent-sized apartment in Denver. Not downtown fancy, more the kind of place where you can actually afford rent without selling a kidney, but still close enough to feel like you're part of the city buzz. Exposed brick, a decent view of the Rockies on a clear day, the whole deal. It was the perfect backdrop for what I thought was going to be the perfect proposal. Liam had been talking about it for months, hinting, dropping subtle clues. You know the drill. We'd been together for 5 years, met in college, the kind of easy, comfortable love that felt like it was written in the stars. He was a software engineer, smart, driven, and genuinely kind. Or at least, that's what I believed. I worked in graphic design, loved my job, and our life felt solid, grounded. We'd even started talking about buying a place, maybe a little bungalow in the suburbs, raising some dogs. It was all coming together. That night, Liam had planned this whole elaborate scavenger hunt. He'd left clues around the apartment, little handwritten notes tucked into books, hidden in the fridge, even one taped under the coffee maker. Each one was a memory, a reference to our past. The first note led me to the park where we had our first picnic. The second to the little independent bookstore where we'd spent hours browsing. It was incredibly romantic, cliché maybe, but in the best way. My heart was doing this insane fluttery dance in my chest the entire time. I was practically vibrating with anticipation. The final clue led me back to our apartment, specifically to the living room where he was waiting. He was on one knee, the ring box in his hand. And the ring, it was stunning. Exactly my style. Simple, elegant, a solitaire diamond that just sparkled like crazy under the dim lighting of our apartment. I cried. Of course I cried. Happy tears, so many happy tears. I said yes, a breathless, choked out mess of an answer. He slid the ring onto my finger and it fit perfectly. It was heavy, substantial. I kept staring at it, mesmerized by the way the light caught the facets. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever owned. That week was a blur of wedding magazines, Pinterest boards, and excited phone calls to my mom. Liam was ecstatic, constantly telling me how happy he was, how he couldn't wait for our future. He'd sometimes trace the outline of the ring on my finger with his thumb, a gesture I found incredibly endearing. "It's perfect," he'd murmur, his voice soft. "Just like you." And I believed him, every word. I was living in a fairy tale. The first flicker of unease was so tiny, so insignificant, I almost dismissed it as paranoia. It was during a phone call with my sister, Sarah. We were laughing about something trivial and I was showing off the ring, tilting my hand to catch the light. Sarah said, "Wow, it's really something, Jen. Almost looks like it has a little glint from the side there. Is that a facet or something?" I squinted at it. No of doubt had been planted. Then came the other things. Small things easy to explain away individually. Liam started being weirdly protective of his laptop. He'd close it abruptly whenever I walked into the room, even if he was just browsing the news. He'd started working late more often, always with vague excuses about project deadlines. He'd also developed this habit of checking his phone constantly. Not just the usual scrolling, but quick, furtive glances, his thumb hovering over the screen. When I asked him about it, he'd brush it off, say he was just catching up on industry news or dealing with a tricky coding problem. One evening, I was looking for a charger in his desk drawer, and I accidentally knocked over a small stack of papers. As I was picking them up, one of them caught my eye. It was a printout of some code, but at the bottom there was a string of numbers and letters that looked familiar. It was a serial number, and it was etched onto the inside of a small metallic piece attached to the ring. My blood ran cold.
I distinctly remembered Liam fiddling with that piece on the ring on our wedding day, saying he was securing the setting. He'd done it so casually, so confidently. I just assumed it was part of the jeweler's work. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a tracking device, a security feature. Modern rings, high tech. But the unease gnawed at me. The next day, while Liam was at work, I pulled out my laptop and started digging. I Googled the serial number. It led me to a website for a niche tech company that specialized in covert surveillance equipment. My breath hitched. This wasn't a security feature. This was something else entirely. I felt sick. My hands were trembling as I took off the ring. I held it up to the light, turning it over and over. And then I saw it. A minuscule lens, barely visible, disguised as one of the decorative metalwork elements on the side of the band. It was so small, so perfectly integrated, you'd never notice it unless you were looking for it. And it was aimed directly inward, towards my finger. The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just a camera. It was a camera designed to record me, my life. Every time I wore the ring, every conversation I had, every gesture I made, every moment of my day. And Liam, my Liam, the man I was going to marry, the man I trusted with my entire existence, had put it there. The world tilted. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I stumbled back, catching myself on the edge of the sofa. The ring felt suddenly alien, a cold, heavy weight on my finger, a symbol of betrayal instead of love. I remember staring at it, my mind racing, trying to piece together the timeline, the lies, the sheer audacity of it all. Why? Why would he do this? What was he trying to find out? Was he paranoid? Was he involved in something? I spent the rest of the afternoon in a daze, the ring still on my finger, a constant, sickening reminder. I couldn't bring myself to take it off. It felt like the only tangible evidence of this nightmare. Every time I looked at it, a fresh wave of anger and disgust washed over me. I was so caught up in my own horror that I barely registered the sound of Liam's keys in the lock. He walked in, that same easy smile on his face, and my stomach clenched. "Hey babe," he said, his voice warm and familiar. He came over and kissed me, and for a split second, I recoiled. He pulled back, his brow furrowed.
Everything okay? I forced a smile, my heart pounding like a drum. Yeah, just a long day. I kept my left hand tucked behind my back. The weight of the secret was crushing me. That night, sleep was impossible. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, Liam breathing softly beside me. I replayed every interaction, every seemingly innocent comment, searching for clues I'd missed. The way he'd always insisted on helping me put the ring on, the way he'd sometimes asked me about my day in excruciating detail, the way he'd brushed off my concerns about his late nights. It all made a horrifying kind of sense now. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him awake and demand answers, but I was paralyzed by a sickening combination of fear and confusion. What if I was wrong? What if there was a rational explanation? But the evidence, the serial number, the tiny lens, it was undeniable. He had betrayed me. He had violated me in the most intimate way possible. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't confront him without proof. I needed to know what he was doing with the recordings. I had to figure out how to access them. The thought of digging into his computer, of snooping, felt wrong, a violation of the trust that was supposed to exist between us. But what trust was left? He had systematically dismantled it, piece by painstaking piece, with a hidden camera in the symbol of our supposed eternal love. The hardest part was the performance, pretending everything was normal, smiling, laughing, going through the motions of our life as if nothing had changed. Each touch, each kiss, felt like a lie. Every time he complimented the ring, I felt a surge of pure hatred. It was a constant, grinding torture. I started staying late at work, using that as an excuse to buy myself time. I needed to get into his home office while he was out. The office was usually locked, but he'd been sloppy lately. The night before, he'd forgotten to lock it. My hands were slick with sweat as I crept into the room, the air thick with the faint scent of his cologne and something metallic, like electronics. His desk was a controlled chaos of wires, monitors, and discarded coffee cups.
something he'd once mentioned, a coding project he was particularly proud of, a strange acronym he used. I typed it in. The screen flickered, and the login screen disappeared, replaced by his desktop. My heart leaped. I started searching through his files, my fingers flying across the keyboard, my mind a frantic whirlwind of dread. I looked in folders labeled projects, personal, work. Nothing immediately stood out. Then I stumbled upon a folder buried deep within his documents folder, labeled simply data. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. I clicked on it. Inside, there were hundreds, maybe thousands of video files. Each one was named with a date and a time. And the dates, they went back to the day after he proposed. I clicked on one, the earliest one. The video loaded, grainy at first, then sharpening. It was our living room. I was on the sofa, laughing with a friend on the phone. I could see my hand, my left hand, the one wearing the engagement ring, clearly visible. The camera angle was slightly odd, a downward tilt, but it captured everything. My entire world, as seen through the cold, unblinking eye of a hidden camera. I scrolled through more files, each click of the mouse a physical blow. I saw myself cooking dinner, watching TV, even sleeping. I saw moments of quiet solitude, moments of joy, moments of sadness, all recorded, all observed by him. Then I found a subfolder within data called Analysis. Curiosity, morbid and horrifying, compelled me to open it. Inside were text files. I opened one. It was a transcript, meticulously detailing my actions, my conversations, even my emotional state, according to his observations. He had been cataloging my life, judging it. One entry, dated just a few weeks ago, chilled me to the bone. It read, "Subject displayed elevated heart rate and prolonged gaze at ring on multiple occasions. Suspect developing awareness. Recommend increased surveillance and adjustment of behavioral protocols." Behavioral protocols? Adjustment of surveillance? He wasn't just watching me. He was analyzing me, strategizing. He was treating me like a subject, an experiment. The love, the trust, the shared future. It was all a lie. He was building a dossier on me, and the ring, the symbol of our commitment, was his surveillance device. The full horror of it washed over me, a tidal wave of despair and fury. I felt utterly exposed, stripped bare, my privacy annihilated. I wanted to break something, to shatter the monitors, to scream until my lungs gave out. But a cold, calculated rage began to simmer beneath the surface. I closed the folder, my hands still trembling, but with a newfound resolve. I needed to understand the full scope of this. I needed to know what he planned to do with all of this. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I couldn't go back to pretending. Not anymore. I had to find a way out of this nightmare. But how? How do you escape from someone who's been watching your every move, who's documented your entire life? The weight of that question settled on me, heavy and suffocating, as I quietly closed his laptop, locked the office door behind me, and walked back into the life that was no longer mine. The weight of that question settled on me, heavy and suffocating, as I quietly closed his laptop, locked the office door behind me, and walked back into the life that was no longer mine. The apartment, once our cozy sanctuary, now felt like a meticulously crafted stage set for a performance I was unwittingly starring in. Every framed photo on the wall, every shared mug in the cupboard, every worn sabbat on the couch, they all screamed of a shared history that was now tainted, poisoned. I felt a phantom itch on my finger where the ring still sat, a constant, unbearable reminder of the betrayal. I couldn't take it off, not yet. It was my only weapon, my only clue. I had to understand what his behavioral protocols entailed, what he was looking for, what he intended to do with this archive of my life. The thought of him analyzing my laughter, my tears, my quiet moments of vulnerability as data points in some twisted experiment made my skin crawl. He had turned my life into a case study, and I was the unwitting subject. The next few days were a tightrope walk. I perfected the art of the vacant smile, the practiced nod, the carefully curated casual conversation. Liam seemed none the wiser. He'd still trace the ring on my finger, whisper sweet nothings about our future, and I'd force myself to lean into his touch, to reciprocate the affection, all while a cold, reptilian part of my brain was cataloging his movements, his expressions, searching for any crack in his facade. He was a good actor, I'd give him that. He played the loving fiancé flawlessly. But I knew now that behind the charm, behind the kind eyes, was a calculating mind, a manipulator who had built a cage around me and then handed me the key.
I started taking the ring off when he wasn't looking, not to hide it, but to examine it more closely. I'd hold it under bright lights, turning it this way and that, trying to discern how the lens was powered, how the data was being transmitted. There were no visible seams, no obvious charging ports. It was a marvel of miniaturization, a testament to his technical skill, and a horrifying symbol of his deception. I imagined him watching me, even now as I held the ring, his eyes glued to some hidden monitor, charting my every move. Was he watching me right now? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I had to assume he was. My sister, Sarah, called that Friday. "Hey, so have you picked a date yet? Mom's already talking about wedding invitations." Sarah was the organized one, the planner. I, on the other hand, had been procrastinating, deliberately putting off any major decisions about the wedding, which now felt like a cruel joke. No, not yet, Sarah. Still figuring things out. My voice sounded hollow, distant, even to my own ears. "Jen, are you okay? You sound off." She sensed it, of course. Sarah always did. I'd built a wall of normalcy, but it was paper thin. Just stressed, wedding planning. It's a lot. I forced a laugh that felt brittle. Liam's been working so much lately, I feel like I'm doing all of it alone. A subtle shift in Liam's behavior began a week later. He became more insistent about our evenings together. No more late nights at work, no more urgent coding emergencies. He wanted me around all the time. At first, I welcomed him, clinging to the illusion of our normal life. But then I realized it was controlling. He'd ask what I was doing, who I was talking to, always with that same innocent curiosity that now felt like interrogation. If I mentioned a friend he didn't particularly like, his smile would tighten just a fraction. His eyes would linger on me a moment too long. He was managing my interactions, subtly steering me away from anyone who might notice something was wrong. He was ensuring I remained within his carefully controlled environment, within the view of his all-seeing ring. I started to feel suffocated. The apartment, the city, my life, it all began to feel like a tiny, suffocating box. I needed air. I needed to escape, even if it was just for a few hours. I told Liam I was going for a long drive to clear my head. He looked at me, his eyes narrowed for a fleeting second. "Alone?" he asked, his voice deceptively casual. "Yeah, just need some space." I tried to keep my tone light, unaffected. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, be careful." As I pulled out of the driveway, I saw him standing on the porch, watching me, his silhouette stark against the setting sun. It felt like a prisoner being released for a supervised hour. I drove for hours, aimlessly, the landscape blurring into a backdrop for my churning thoughts. I ended up in a small mountain town, nestled in the Rockies, a place I'd always loved for its quiet solitude. I found a small diner, the kind with vinyl booths and a waitress who called everyone honey. I ordered a black coffee, and as I sat there, staring out the window at the darkening sky, the dam finally broke. The carefully constructed facade crumbled, and the tears came, hot and stinging. I cried for the trust that had been shattered, for the love that had been twisted into a surveillance tool, for the future that had been stolen from me. I felt a primal urge to smash the ring, to rip it off my finger and throw it into the wilderness. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to know what he had, what he intended to do with it. The fear of the unknown was a powerful motivator, but so was the burning desire for justice, for an explanation. When I got back to the apartment, it was late. Liam was asleep, or pretending to be. I slipped into bed, the ring digging into my finger. I lay there, listening to his steady breathing, and a new kind of anger began to build. A cold, hard resolve. I couldn't be a victim anymore. I had to take control. I had to find out how to access those recordings myself. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I knew Liam had a personal cloud storage account, something he'd set up years ago for backing up his personal projects. He was meticulous about his data. I remembered him mentioning the platform once during a conversation about cloud security. I just needed the login details. This was the riskiest part. I'd already violated his privacy
privacy by going through his computer. Now, I was about to commit a far greater intrusion. Liam left for work at his usual time. I waited until I was sure he was gone, then I went straight to his office. The door was unlocked, as I'd anticipated. He was becoming complacent, which was my advantage. I sat down at his desk, my hands clammy. I looked at his computer. I needed to access his browser history, his saved passwords. It was a maze of digital security, but I remembered him talking about his password manager, how he used it to store all his credentials. I found the application icon on his desktop. It too was password protected. This was a setback. I tried the same acronym I'd used to get into his computer, but it didn't work. He'd changed it. Panic began to set in. I was running out of time. He could be back at any moment. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. What else was important to him? What personal details could be his password? I thought back to our conversations, his casual mentions of childhood memories, his obsessions. Then it hit me. He had this almost unhealthy fascination with vintage arcade games, particularly a specific one from his childhood. He'd even bought an old cabinet for it and had it in the garage, though it was never hooked up. He'd always talked about it with this nostalgic reverence. I typed in the name of the game, followed by his birth year. Bingo! The password manager unlocked. My heart pounded in my chest as I navigated through the saved passwords. I scrolled past dozens of logins for various websites and services until I found it, his cloud storage account. The username was his email address. The password. I copied it carefully, my fingers trembling. I then opened a new browser window, went to the cloud storage website, and entered the credentials. The interface loaded, a stark white screen with folders neatly organized. My breath hitched. I scrolled through the folder names, work projects, personal photos, music library, and then I saw it, a folder named Jen. My stomach plummeted. This was it. This was where he kept everything. I clicked on it. The folder opened, revealing a dizzying array of subfolders, audio logs, video feed, activity transcripts. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely control the mouse. I clicked on video feed. Thousands of video files, each one meticulously dated and timestamped. The sheer volume was overwhelming. It was my life, digitized, categorized, and stored. I couldn't bring myself to watch another full video. I had seen enough. I scrolled through the file names, a morbid fascination pulling me in. There were videos of me sleeping, videos of me talking on the phone, videos of me alone in the apartment. And then I saw it. A folder labeled Recent. I clicked on it. The videos here were newer, more focused. I opened the latest file. It was just a few days old.
The video showed me sitting on the sofa, looking out the window, a melancholy expression on my face. My left hand, the one wearing the ring, was resting on my knee, clearly visible. Then I heard it. My own voice, distorted slightly, coming from the speakers. It was the audio from the ring. I'd always thought the camera was just that, a camera, but it had a microphone too. I clicked on another recent video. This one showed me in the kitchen, making coffee. I was humming to myself, a quiet, tuneless melody. And then, faint but clear, I heard Liam's voice. He was talking to someone on the phone. His voice low, almost a whisper. I couldn't make out the words at first, but the tone, it was urgent, hushed. I rewound the audio, straining to hear. Then it became clearer. He was talking about the project. He mentioned deadlines, data extraction, and something about keeping her compliant. Compliant? The word hung in the air, a chilling accusation. He was discussing my life, my reactions, as if I were some sort of research subject, or worse, a prisoner. I scrolled through more of the recent video files, my blood running cold. In almost all of them, I could hear snippets of Liam's voice on phone calls, always hushed, always secretive. It was clear he was reporting on me, discussing my behavior, my moods, my whereabouts. He was feeding information to someone. But who? And why? Then I found it, a text file within the audio logs folder titled Operational Update 2024-10-26. I opened it. It was a detailed report, written in a cold, clinical tone, not unlike the analysis files I'd seen on his computer. It chronicled my recent behavior, my increasing anxiety, my suspicious actions. And then, at the end, a sentence that made my blood freeze. Subject is exhibiting signs of awareness, proceeding with Phase 2 deployment. Contingency protocols may be initiated if compliance is not maintained. Phase 2 deployment. Contingency protocols? What did that mean? Was he planning something more drastic? Was he going to confront me? Or worse? The ring felt like it was burning into my finger. I was trapped in a nightmare of his making, and he was escalating. I had to get out. But how? How do you escape a hunter when you're the prey, and the hunter has documented your every step, your every breath for months? The silence of the apartment suddenly felt deafening, pregnant with unseen threats. I closed the cloud storage window, my mind racing, a cold dread settling in my gut. I had to leave. Now. But where would I go? And what would he do if he realized I knew? I slammed the laptop shut, the sound echoing in the sudden stillness. My hands were still shaking, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Phase 2 deployment. Contingency protocols. The words played on a loop in my head, each repetition amplifying the terror. He wasn't just watching me anymore. He was actively managing me, and something was about to happen. I couldn't stay here, not for another second. I didn't bother to pack. Grabbing my purse from the kitchen counter, I slipped on the only shoes I could find, a pair of sneakers by the door. My keys were in my purse. I didn't grab my phone. Why bother? It was probably compromised too, just another extension of his surveillance network. I just needed to get out. Out of this apartment, out of this city, out of his reach. I moved on instinct, like an animal fleeing a predator. The apartment door clicked shut behind me, a soft, final sound. I didn't look back. I didn't allow myself to. The hallway carpet felt strangely alien under my feet. The elevator ride down was an eternity of suspended dread. Every ding, every tremor of the car sent a fresh wave of panic through me. Was he waiting? Was he watching from his office window, a grim satisfaction on his face as he saw me make my move? Stepping out onto the street, the evening air hit me like a physical blow. It was cool, damp, the scent of exhaust fumes and damp concrete filling my lungs. It was the smell of freedom and of terrifying uncertainty. The city lights blurred before my eyes. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to put distance between myself and Liam. My mind raced, discarding every possible destination. His parents' house? No, he'd know where to find me. Sarah's? Maybe, but she lived only an hour away. He could get there quickly. A hotel? Which one? He'd have access to my credit card statements. I walked for what felt like miles, my footsteps echoing on the empty sidewalks. The city, usually a source of comfort and anonymity, now felt like a trap. Every face a potential informant, every shadow a hiding place for his spies. I found myself scanning rooftops, checking parked cars, my senses on hyper alert. It was exhausting, this constant vigilance. Then, a thought, a desperate flicker of an idea. The old cabin, my grandfather's cabin, deep in the Adirondacks. It was remote, isolated, a place I hadn't visited in years. No cell service, no internet, a true escape. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was the only option that felt remotely safe. I hailed a taxi, the driver a burly man with kind eyes who didn't ask questions. Albany, I said, my voice raspy. And then, we'll see. He nodded, a flicker of concern in his gaze, but he simply started the meter. The ride to the train station was a blur. I bought a ticket for the next train heading north, the conductor's bored voice a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within me. As the train pulled out of the station, leaving the glittering skyline behind, a small measure of relief washed over me. I was moving. I was putting miles between us. The train journey was a surreal experience. I sat by the window, watching the suburban sprawl give way to darker, more rugged landscapes. The darkness outside was a welcome cloak, shielding me from the prying eyes I imagined were everywhere. I didn't sleep. I just stared out the window, the rhythmic clatter of the wheels a hypnotic soundtrack to my racing thoughts. Liam, my Liam, the man I had loved, trusted, planned a life with. How could he have done this? What kind of person was he to meticulously document every aspect of my life, to turn our love into a perverse experiment? Guilt gnawed at me. Had I missed something? Had I been so blinded by love that I'd ignored the warning signs? The behavioral protocols, the analysis, the subject exhibiting signs of awareness? It all pointed to something far more sinister than simple jealousy or control. He wasn't just trying to keep me to himself, he was studying me. But for what purpose? I arrived in Albany in the pre-dawn hours. The air was crisp and cold.
biting at my exposed skin. I found a bus station, a dingy place smelling of stale coffee and desperation. I bought a ticket for a small town near the trailhead that led to the cabin. The bus ride was even rougher, a jerky, bone-rattling journey along winding mountain roads. The few other passengers were mostly locals, their faces weathered and stoic, their eyes holding a quiet understanding of the harsh beauty of this place. By the time I reached my final stop, the sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. The small town was little more than a general store and a handful of scattered houses. I walked for what felt like hours, the dirt road eventually turning into a rough trail. The air grew thinner, colder.
The trees, mostly pines and birches, stood like silent sentinels, their branches dusted with frost. My lungs burned with every breath, my legs ached with every step, but I pushed on, driven by a primal need for safety. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I saw it. Tucked away in a small clearing, nestled amongst the trees, was my grandfather's cabin. It was rustic, weathered, a simple structure of logs and stone, but it felt like a palace. I fumbled with the old, stiff lock, my fingers numb with cold. The door creaked open, revealing the dusty interior. The air was stale, cold, filled with the scent of old wood and pine needles. A thick layer of dust covered everything. Cobwebs draped the corners like macabre decorations. It was a ghost of a memory, frozen in time. I spent the next few days in a state of numb exhaustion. I cleaned, I chopped wood, I made a fire. The silence was profound, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the whisper of the wind through the trees. There was no cell service, no internet. Liam couldn't reach me, he couldn't watch me. For the first time in months, I felt a sliver of peace. But it was a fragile peace, overshadowed by the lingering terror of what he had done and what he might do. I replayed the events over and over in my mind. The Phase 2 deployment. What did it mean? Was he coming after me? Was he sending someone? The thought of him, his calm, calculating gaze, his soft words laced with deception, sent shivers down my spine. He was a monster, and I had loved him. The shame and anger warred within me. One afternoon, I was sitting by the fire, staring into the flames, when a thought struck me. The ring. It was still on my finger. I had almost forgotten about it. I pulled it off, holding it in my palm. It was heavy, intricate, a piece of jewelry that had become a symbol of my enslavement. I turned it over and over, looking for any clue, any weakness. There was nothing obvious. But then, as I twisted it, I felt a slight give, an almost imperceptible click. My heart leaped. I pressed harder and a tiny seam appeared along the band. It was a clasp. With trembling fingers, I managed to pry it open. Inside, nestled against the metal, was a tiny USB drive. It was so small, so discreet, I would have never found it if I hadn't been actively looking for a way to access his data. This was it. This was my chance to know everything. I rushed to the small, battery-powered laptop I kept in the cabin for emergencies. It was old, slow, and completely disconnected from any network. I inserted the USB drive. The laptop whirred to life, and a folder appeared on the screen. Project Nightingale. My hands shook as I opened it. It was a massive archive of data. Not just the videos and audio logs from the ring, but much more. Emails, text messages, encrypted files, research papers on behavioral psychology, artificial intelligence, remote surveillance. It was a chillingly comprehensive dossier on my life. He hadn't just been monitoring me, he had been studying me, dissecting my every emotion, my every thought, as part of some twisted research project. The behavioral protocols were detailed instructions on how to elicit specific reactions from me. The analysis was his detailed breakdown of my emotional state after certain interactions. The Project Nightingale title itself spoke volumes. He wasn't just my fiancé, he was my captor, my tormentor, and I was his prize specimen. I scrolled through the files, my stomach churning. There were transcripts of his conversations with someone, a colleague, a superior perhaps, discussing my progress, my compliance, and the ethical implications of their work. They were discussing me as if I were a lab rat. The cold, detached language sent waves of nausea through me. Then I found a file labeled Final Report, Subject J. I clicked on it, my eyes blurring with unshed tears. It was his final assessment of me. He detailed my vulnerabilities, my fears, my deepest desires. He analyzed my capacity for love, for trust, for forgiveness. And then, at the end, a chilling conclusion. Subject J has reached optimal compliance. Project Nightingale successful. Emotional response metrics within acceptable parameters. Ready for data extraction and final integration. Data extraction? Final integration? What did that mean? Was he going to implant something in me? Was he going to rewrite my memories? The fear, which had subsided slightly with the isolation,
rushed back with a vengeance, colder and sharper than ever. He had been planning this all along. The engagement, the wedding, it was all part of the plan, a way to keep me close, to monitor me until he was ready for the final phase. I couldn't read anymore. I had seen enough. I had seen the full extent of his deception, the depth of his cruelty. He had stolen my life, my love, my trust. He had turned my heart into a data point. I stood up, my legs feeling weak, and walked to the window. The cabin was surrounded by dense forest, a natural fortress, but it was a fragile one. He would find me. He always found what he was looking for, and when he did, I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that it would be the end of me. I looked at the ring in my hand. The USB drive was still attached. This wasn't just a record of his betrayal. It was proof. Proof of what he had done. Proof of what he was capable of. It was the only weapon I had. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if I would ever be free from his shadow. But I knew one thing. I would never let him win. I would fight. I would expose him, even if it meant losing myself in the process. I walked to the fireplace, the ring and USB drive clutched tightly in my hand. The fire crackled, its flames dancing like hungry ghosts. I held the ring over the hottest part of the fire. The metal began to glow, the intricate details twisting and warping. The USB drive too began to smoke. I watched as the evidence of his twisted obsession melted away, consumed by the flames. It was a symbolic act, a way of purging myself of his influence, of his control. It hurt, physically and emotionally, to destroy it, to erase the proof of his crime, but it was necessary. As the last embers died down, I stood there, breathing in the smoke-filled air. The silence of the cabin pressed in on me, but it was no longer the silence of isolation and fear. It was the silence of a battle just begun. I was broken, shattered, but not defeated. I had survived, and I would keep surviving. I would find a way to live, to heal, to reclaim the life he had tried to steal. It wouldn't be easy. It would be a long, hard road, but for the first time since I discovered his secret, a flicker of hope, small but persistent, began to glow within me. The fight was far from over, but I was ready.